Welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. This is brought to you by my firm, Health Launchpad, and also our partners at HIMSS. I'm very grateful for their support in bringing the show to you. I'm Adam Turinas. I'm your host. I'm the CEO and founder of Health Launchpad. So thank you to you for listening to the show. You might be watching the video, and I'm always looking for new topics. So if you've got something you think this would be a good topic, email me at adam@healthlaunchpad.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Adam Turinas on LinkedIn. So today I've got a great guest, and he's one of my close friends, and he's also a partner in crime with Health Launchpad, one of the principals of Health Launchpad, the awesome Mr. Robert, aka Bob Blount. So I'm going to bring Bob to the stage. And Bob, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you on. You've been listening to these, me blathering on for a couple of years, and it's so good to have a fresh voice on. May get you to actually host some of these going forward.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to join you on the call today and talk about some of the things we're doing.
You've got a great background. I always introduce you as, I personally am a marketing guy that knows quite a lot about sales. You're a really great sales guy who knows a ton about marketing. So, but tell everybody a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of serving both on the brand side and the agency side. I've worked for Dell and a number of technology companies, but then I found my way over to the agency side, founding an agency, working for Ogilvy Public Relations for a while. And it was during that time that I was recruited to MedicAlert on the board, and ultimately became chairman of the board at MedicAlert. And that was kind of my entry into the world of healthcare. But I never said, wow, I'm a healthcare guy. I was a sales guy, and I happened to have a technology background. And that was very, very interesting to the healthcare world. And fast forward, I've been doing this for a while. I feel more and more like a marketing guy who happens to have that sales experience, but I always dig back to that sales experience.
Yeah, I always learn so much from you about sales. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I know you've got a lot of passion for, and you've been teaching me a lot about, and it's the whole notion of sales enablement, but specifically about the impact that AI is having on sales enablement. And it's really exciting watching what you and other colleagues are doing with that. So, what actually started you using AI? Like, you were one of the first members of our team to really start sort of, this is almost a year ago now, start saying, hey, we need to start experimenting with this, and now, and ASAP. So you've been beating that drum for a year now. So what was it that got you to start sort of playing around with it, and particularly in the sales space?
Yeah, I think the main thing was I watched a lot of great work being done by the marketing side of the house, and sales, just didn't pick up the baton sometimes, right? It's like an example would be great buyer personas crafted by somebody, right? Put in some fancy report and digitally put into a file cabinet or printed out, but they really didn't use it. Like, they knew, they were aware of it. And so I just started playing around with that notion and said, if I just focus on one thing, what's the one thing that I could use AI for to help sales open more doors and intrigue the buyers that they're engaging with or trying to engage with if they're a prospect?
So, and give me a couple of examples of like what some of your first experiments were.
Yeah. So one of the first ones was just simplicity of writing an email, right? A lot of salespeople that are selling into healthcare might be targeting, say, a chief nursing officer, and they have an idea of these titles, but they don't really have the depth of knowledge in terms of like, what does a chief nursing officer do? So instead of going and searching for that, you can use AI to get really specific examples. And what I discovered was the more prompts and things that you give AI, the better the outcome, right? So all I wanted to do initially was write 3 email sequences that I can use if I'm a sales development rep to a target of someone like a chief nursing officer. And when I got specific, Adam, when I said a chief nursing officer of this type of health system or at this specific hospital, it got even better, right? And that was what excited me. It kind of woke me up to going, oh, this is really interesting. What could be next?
So you showed me the other day how to use one of the AI tools. You have to kind of go into which one it was to create a persona. I thought that was really interesting. You did talk through how you did that.
Yeah, so I've been playing around with a lot of different AI tools, from ChatGPT to Perplexity AI. I found initially that Perplexity offered cited references a lot better than ChatGPT did at the time. Now they've gotten better, as they all do every single day. They seem to get better and better. Copilot and Bard are really good. And the one that I used the most when I was looking at personas and writing personas was Claude.ai.
Oh,
And
right.
Claude was really good at writing, right? It was just like, okay, I wanted to write something as opposed to just like craft up stuff. I wanted to start the framework for writing an email, right? That was thoughtful and relevant and very focused on the persona, right? I'm looking for a healthcare professional who happens to be a chief nursing officer.
Yeah.
And then when I was writing the personas and looking at it, it was really getting into the details about what they care about, right? Like, what does a chief nursing officer at a regional health system care about? Like, what's going to get their attention if I'm out here trying to sell them something? How should I craft my message?
Right. So what did you do? Write like a series of prompts? I mean, how do you turn that into a persona? Because typically when we create personas and the buyer journey around the persona, we do that through a sort of a structured discussion. And brain's not really brainstorming, but it's a very sort of structured process. And when we inform it through first party research. So not all clients have got the appetite to do that, but we try to encourage them to at least let us go talk to 2 or 3 of your customers, so that we can make sure that what we're informed is more than just everybody's opinion. So how do you do that? How do you do that using Claude? And then how did you feel about the output of that?
Yeah, so initially it was a lot of trial and error. I didn't understand the prompts, right? And why you needed to ask it to write something with a very specific tone, right? And I think one of the things that's often forgotten is that people don't realize, hey, you know what? I can go do a lot more research that's aligned with what I'm trying to accomplish. I looked to what was I trying to accomplish? Writing a series of 3 different messages to a chief nursing officer. I was also specific in the sense that I said, oh, it's this health system.
Right.
And I even had the person's name. So that's when I stepped back and realized, oh, I actually know the person's name. I'm very specific.
Did you find something on LinkedIn or something like that?
I knew that this was a target hospital, right?
Right.
And so as a target hospital, I would typically go to LinkedIn, right? And I would get whatever LinkedIn tells me. Well, I found it fascinating to look at 3 or 4 different tools other than LinkedIn and other than Google to say, give me information about this person, right?
Yes.
So it's going to go look for publicly available information. It's not going to look for things that Google will give you, which is a stack rank of search based on whatever criteria. It's going to give you articles that they published, if they published articles.
Right.
It's going to give you information from their website, if there's information about them on the website. It will give you all kinds of other research information. And so when I was starting to write, I didn't know that. And I would just say, oh, I want to write an email. I want to write this. And I was treating the AI tools similar to the way I treated Google, right? Like it was a search aspect. And that's when the light bulb came on for me to say, I really need to step back from it. And I need to think about a very consistent framework in terms of how I ask the tools, what I ask it, and even down to the tone, a professional tone. And maybe I add in anxiety, a professional tone of somebody who's in the 4th quarter and things aren't going so well.
Right.
That kind of specific, prompt is going to give you a much better output, right? And it's garbage in and garbage out. If you don't put thought into what you want it to do, you'll get a kind of subpar response, and you'll get it. Yes, you will get an email. Yes, you will get it to be, 250 words or less, or however many. And you need to tell it, write less than 250 words or however many words that you want it to be.
Yeah.
And instead of guessing, ask it. Like, separate from the writing it, ask it,
Yeah.
what's the optimal size of an email that I should send to somebody who's under a lot of pressure?
Yeah. So a couple of things, just to break down a couple of things, a lot in what you said, but just a couple of things that really stood out to me. One was this notion, which is with Google, you get stack rank. So you're really going to look what's on the first page, and you're probably not going to get much beyond their LinkedIn profile. Whereas what the generative AI engines are doing is they're looking at page 100. If there's an article that they wrote or they contributed to recently that's on page 100 or in the news that didn't hit the front page of the Google search results, they're going to actually include that. So that's quite interesting. The other thing is, one of the things that you're getting at, and it's a really actionable thing that's a very important lesson when using these tools, is when you create a prompt, do it as a series of prompts, like do it in this form of a conversation. Don't write an essay and put the essay, write a prompt as an essay. Just break it down, because you end up with a much better outcome. And I think that's what one of the things that I think you're really perfecting.
And one of those examples, Adam, is the research element. I broke that down and treated it separately, right? So initially what I did is I went and I looked at their website for the company, and I found actually a PDF file that they posted of the 2024 budget. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting, right? So I saved that file. And then I said, using this information, attaching the file, write a summary of the key points that a chief nursing officer would care the most about in 2024. And it gave me really powerful stuff, right? It was just it was more than I could include.
Yeah, because you wrote that in a blog post, which we'll make sure is a link to that in the show notes. But I remember it's got 5 or 6 different key themes. And those give you could just take each theme and say, write me an email about each one for that persona. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, and if you think about breaking it down from a cycle perspective of where they are, try to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're selling to. Right. And so part of that is it's December, and you're going to send an email before the year end. Where is their mind? Right? Mm-hmm. Are the books closed? Are they not closed? The budgets are all set. Like, what do they care in Q1? What do they care the most about? Like, you really can break it down in a way that starts to kind of be stepwise towards what Q1, Q2 look like.
So, okay, great series of tips here for any salesperson or BDR on how to use these Gen AI tools like Claude and ChatGPT to create more tailored emails that are at least much more empathetic with the buyer that you're emailing to, which is a great discipline, right? The other thing that I think you've spent a lot of time on is the notion of how you use these tools in creating better buyer journeys, and how you then can create different emails and different content for the different stages of the buyer journey. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was another one of those. I had been thinking about the idea that technology could support personalized content based on the stage in the funnel that a client, a prospect is at, right? And so if you're at the top of the funnel, there's certain types of content that resonates. But now once you've become an opportunity and you're living in the cycle that you've defined, right? Each of those stages are relevant to different members of the buying committee, right? For example, a finance-minded person isn't likely to be involved in the early stages of the sales cycle, especially if you're selling into healthcare, where the sales cycle can be very long.
Unless it's revenue cycle management or something like that. But if it's, whatever. Yeah, it's sort of
an enterprise sales to a large health system, like, you're not going to get the finance folks involved until later in the process, right? Yeah. So we took that type of insight and said, okay, I don't want to personalize content to the buying committee early in the sales stage and have content for a finance person. I want to wait until we're like in stage 5, our, let's say 8 stages in our sales cycle. And then we start to create very small doses of content, right? And one of the things that you're trying to do in sales is, once you've identified a champion, right? Who's your champion in the process? One of your jobs is to make sure that your champion is armed well to get the rest of the buying committee on board.
Yeah. Right.
And so I started thinking about, okay, how can I give my champion 3 pieces of content to share with other members of the buying committee who have not been engaged up to this point, right?
I
So we're
love
at stage
that.
4.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, hey, Adam, here are 3 pieces of content. I want to help you help me. And that's really what it's about. So I've crafted 3 messages that you can just forward over to them. One includes a white paper that we did on the ROI of our solution. Another includes something else that they're going to care about. And imagine, I go back to the relevance of the research.
Yeah.
I'm now bringing stuff that's relevant because I'm looking at their budget.
Yeah.
Right? And I know about the things that they care about because it's in their plan, right? Instead of just a canned email from a salesperson who's just sending it out there and not being empathetic to the financial pains that they're going to experience in 2024.
Yep.
So it's a bit about talking their language, but we're doing it using their data. So data and analytics that come behind that effort can be very powerful when you think about the journey itself.
I think where this can have the greatest applicability is in what we're trying to do with our clients around account-based marketing. And one of the things that I think that we help our clients with, and it is a constant struggle, is for the last 10, 15 years, 20, 30 years, whatever, there's been a shift towards marketing automation, which means it's all about getting out quantities of emails and marketing materials. And so there's a mind shift that has to happen with ABM, which is that you're trying to be much more personalized and tailored in what you do. And particularly when you get sort of deeper down when you're a little bit further down the buyer's journey. And so what I like about that is that you can see how you can do personalization at a bit more scale. I don't think it's like at the scale of say, you wouldn't just say, you'd still want to spend the time to tailor the messaging to the individuals, but it makes it much, much more efficient. You've been using it in your outreach. I mean, and how have you found it? Are you pleased with the results that you're getting?
I get higher engagement in the process. And the biggest reason why is I'm not just relevant, I'm really specific, right? Like that example of their budget. And I've created a small, thoughtful piece of content that engages people, right? I also use it with the mindset of this is my style. I'm not an in-your-face salesperson. I'm the kind of person that wants to connect with you and build a long-term relationship. And that's not going to necessarily translate into an immediate sale. I had a CRO at a health tech company in Atlanta, and we happened to be on a business trip in Atlanta, and I'd reached out to him and just to get to know, offered to have a cup of coffee with him. Didn't work out, right? Fast forward a few months, he reached out to me and said, hey, would love to connect. I've landed a new gig. It's a brand that you'll know. And we had a great conversation. And I know that will lead to something down the road, but it's not my intent. And so I use AI in that sense where how do I learn more about people in terms of where they are in their journey? So I can kind of enter into a pathway that just starts with conversations and getting to know people. Yeah. And so I think that's a powerful way to use the technology.
Yeah. I see a couple of opportunity and challenges. So I think for salespeople who are engaging with a prospect once they're qualified, the application of what you described is like any salesperson who's not trying to use it is really putting themselves at a disadvantage. They're going to wake up if there's a more traditional sort of kind of dyed in the wool salesperson who says, yeah, I'm just not going to use that kind of stuff. I've got too many tools. That stuff doesn't work. I think they're going to wake up in about a year's time and realize that the world's just passed them by. Yeah. Where I think the bigger challenge, and also it can be a real opportunity for those that figure it out, is in training SDRs, because SDRs, in many cases, they've got quotas, right? They've got to do 100 emails or 100 calls, try to do 100 calls, and it's all about quantity over quality. There's a shift there that I think needs to happen, where the SDRs, maybe what happens is that through the use of things like intent data, we can help the SDR said, you should be making 100 calls. You should be making 40 calls, and only to these 40 accounts, because those accounts actually have a buying signal. Don't worry about
Adam,
the other.
You're headed down the right path, because if I say this word, your back will straighten up and you'll have this almost visceral reaction, because this is how, as consumers, when we hear the word chatbots, we think about a technology that's robotic and doesn't feel good. And it's like, I don't need that. Or when you call into a call center and you have a chatbot and it's like, it just feels clunky, right? So if you listen to the example you just gave, and if you are utilizing intent-based data and you have a chatbot listening and looking at that data, and they're doing research right now, we're just beginning to understand the potential power of AI. In terms of you can write rules for it to go do things, right? So let's say that we get 40 signals from our intent-based engine, right? I don't want to give that to a salesperson at first. I ultimately want to give that to technology, and I want it to dig even deeper, right? Go bump this against my ICP. Go look at my buyers in the buying committee. Go gather research and information about those buyers on the buying committee. See who's showing the most intent and refine that down, and then give that to the SDR. But now what you're doing is you're pulling the needles out of the haystack, and you're saying, here, Adam, go work on this. Go get a meeting with this one, because this person's been to our site 28 times in the last 30 days. And multiple members of the buying committee have also been on it. But this one seems to be sending a unique signal. And you have, this much information in your CRM about that person already, and you're already engaged. Now I'm actually like, oh my gosh, you've done most of my work for me. And that's exactly part of the point. It's not that it's there to replace you. It's there to make you better.
Right. Yes. And I think that's it. Everybody, and it doesn't matter what you do. I think there are people who are natural, and most people probably are naturally a bit worried about, I don't want to start playing around with it because I may discover that this is actually going to make me redundant. But what we all find by playing around with this stuff is actually exactly what you described, which is it's a co-pilot. And I think Microsoft is branding it as co-pilot. Just brilliant. I mean, our content team found the same thing. As I think, to start with, like, you go back beginning of the year, I think everybody was a bit nervous about this. But then I think once they started to see how it could help them process a whole bunch of interviews, or just gather data and structure it in a way that they could use it, I think they saw the benefit of it, but also can see the limitations, because I'm sorry, none of these write as well as our content leads. And I use them a lot in what I'm doing with a lot of the content that I create. But I still will spend as much time editing and refining as I do actually using it to create the first draft.
So you bring up a great point, Adam, because this is one of the things that I fear many early adopters of AI will do. They'll go and they'll do the work and they'll get it done and they'll just kick it out, right? And they don't do the due diligence on what you described there. The other piece is they're not investing that time to really understand. They're just using it as a transaction tool versus something that's going to completely change the way they actually function. And if they don't look at it from that perspective, and to your point, if they don't use it at all, they're doing themselves a disservice, right? Because they will get opted out of jobs, right? People that are not embracing the technology to understand and be better are the ones that are going to get moved out, because the roles are changing very, very fast.
So this has all been really helpful and insightful. As we wrap up, have you got any kind of actionable, like, do's and don'ts for salespeople on how to start playing around with AI now?
Yeah, the first do is play before you use it to send something to a client. Get around and play in 3 different AIs. Don't just do one, just play with a couple of different ones and give it the same set of instructions. You can go Google the top prompts for AI. Go find the prompts, because they're out there. They're all over, and everybody has opinions about this. find 5 or 6 that will help you to say, okay, that matters a lot, right? I use the example in healthcare and financially constrained models, like, okay, that transcends. So find something that you can use as a prompt to say that's going to matter to anybody they sell to because they're in a regulated industry. Awesome. The other one is talk to your colleagues, right? What do you do? Right. I've learned from you, Adam, in the sense of I never said I was a great writer, but this helps me be a much better writer. There are a lot of mediocre writers out there. Now I can write a lot better, but I still need to edit. I still need to talk to people that are good at it. And so number 2 is find somebody who can be your champion, right? To help you get better, right? And just guide you along the way. And don't be mistaken. They're bumping along with you. Like you're both learning. And we get better together instead of just trying to do it on our own and go, oh, did you write that with AI? Yeah. Yes, I did. And it's helping us be stronger.
I so that I get so like you, I get so many emails every day from people soliciting me, and I 99% of them I just ignore. But occasionally I'll read one, and I got one which I read yesterday because it annoyed me so much because it said, "Hi Adam, you should basically Adam your book." And I thought, well, because we published the book this year, I thought it was about something about the book, and they wanted to ask me. It's like no, and the email was basically saying some BS about somebody with my authority and my experience should really think about writing a book. I've spent some time of looking at your profile on LinkedIn and and I was thinking. So I actually rarely respond. I responded to this one, said, if you'd spent 30 seconds on my profile, you'd see that I actually did write a book last year. So you take the time to actually do the research before you send emails. I haven't heard back from them. And that's where actually, if you're using AI intelligently, it can help, it can help you make you look smart rather than look like a dummy.
Yeah, no, and that's the third one that I think is so important is fact check yourself.
Yep.
Against doing something that a bit of that is what I call the puffy chest. It's somebody's like, oh, you should do this, Adam. Come on, you should do this. And we all get those messages, right? And that's not a great way to use the technology, right? I always like that. Sometimes you can take something that's been written and say, that's good. It's a good outline for me. I can do a better job writing now that I have that thought in my head along those lines of fact checking yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take what it gives you as verbatim. Take it as a guide and say, man, I can write this. And you're going to find yourself being stronger and being able to do that if you take those approaches.
Great. Bob, this has been great. Yeah, as ever, I always learn something from you, and that's just didn't disappoint today. So, Bob, thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll get you back, maybe get you to host 1 or 2 of these in the future. So with that, I'm going to say farewell and thank you all for listening. And if you're listening and you want to see the video, there's a link to the YouTube in the show notes. And if you're watching and you want to actually subscribe to the podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and whatever your favorite podcast application is. And again, if you've got any suggestion of a really smart thing to have on the show that you think other health tech marketers would find helpful, just reach out to me, adam@healthlaunchpad.com, and do subscribe. We have a ton of great stuff coming up. And actually the next show we'll be doing is going to be a live show with Mike Milliard, who is the editor-in-chief of Team Media, HIMS Media. So he's going to be talking about what are some of the key HIT healthcare technology trends to watch for in 2024. So with that, I will bid you farewell.